dugsiyada al-irshaad iskuul.
Mubarak Deq Adam, teacher Mullah. Welcome back to our English period at Al-Shad Secondary School, especially grades Form 2. Dear students, inshallah ta'ala, today we are going to start Unit 9. Especially in this lesson, I'd like to teach you grammar lesson. When I say grammar, some of the students, they don't support, they don't like that one. They say to me, teacher, we don't understand grammar. Oh, welcome. This is very simple, it's not hard. Dear students, are you ready? Let's get started. This is our topic today. Inshallah ta'ala, in this lesson, I'd like to teach you the difference between active voice and passive voice. Objectives. At the end of this lesson, students should be able to know the difference between active voice and passive voice, the general uses of passive voice, and how to change from active voice sentence to passive voice sentence. That's our main objective. Let's get started, dear students. The students of mine, to understand the difference between active voice and passive voice, you have to understand first the three important words. Let's get started. This, be with me please, be with me. This is called subject, verb, and object. Dear students of mine, if you know well these three important words, you can understand easily the difference between active voice and passive voice. But if you don't know one of these words, it's very hard, it's not simple to understand passive voice well. Let me tell you the difference between these three words. Subject, you know subject. Subject is a person or thing that does the action. Well, let me say one more time. Subject is a person or thing that does the action. In Arabic language we call this one, Arabic language we call this one, if you know Arabic, fa'il. This one we call fa'il. Fa'il, you know fa'il? I think you know Arabic well. MashaAllah, that's great. So subject is a person or thing that does the action. If I say, I teach English, who teach English? I teach English. I, the one who did the action, who does the action of teaching. So I'm subject. So subject is the person or thing that does the action. For example, if I tell you one example of this one, for example, in here I have Ahmad, I have to say Ahmad kicked the ball. Let me ask you one question, dear students. Who kicked the ball? Ahmad. So we would like to say Ahmad is a subject. Don't memorize, don't say subject is the doer of the action, something like that. Just you have to understand, take the concept. Ahmad is the one who kicked the ball. So we call this one subject. Subject is a person or thing that does the action. For example, Ahmad kicked the ball. Ahmad did the action. In this situation we call the Ahmad subject. In English, in Arabic language we call fa'il. And Somali language we call falsamay. Do you know falsamay? Falsamay is someone who did the action. Let me continue. Verb. I think you know verb. Verb is the action. This one is the action. This one is the action. Word done by the subject. in English we call verb. It's not verb, it's a verb. Arabic language we call fi'l. I think some of you know Arabic, so that's I want to tell you in Arabic sometimes. Sometimes I like to tell you Somali. Because of the main nature we need is to understand. It's not memorize a lot of vocabulary, but take this concept. Verb is the fi'l, it's the action. For example, this one, Ahmed kicked the ball. Kick is a verb. This one we call verb. In Arabic we call fi'l. Lastly, I like to tell you object. You know object? I think you know object already because already I have told you this one. Object is the receiver of the action. This one we call receiver, sorry. This one is the receiver. This one is the receiver of the action. Always a person or thing or animal. Always we can put at end. We can put at end. Ahmed kicked the ball. This ball we call object. Students of mine, if you can identify the difference between these three important words, subject, verb, and object. Also, you can understand well the difference between passive voice and active voice. Let us come back to our lesson. Today, inshallah ta'ala, let me know the difference between active voice and passive voice. Now, I'm gonna give you two examples to understand the difference between these two voices. Number one, Ahmed kicked the ball. We start the subject and the verb and the object. In this sentence, I can write another way. For example, let me write. Be with me please, don't sleep in a class. Don't sleep in a class. I have to say, the ball was kicked. This one you can pronounce like T. Kicked by Ahmed. By Ahmed. Students of mine, let me come back to our lesson. Ahmed kicked the ball. The ball was kicked by Ahmed. In this situation, in here, when the sentence begins with subject, we call it active voice. When the sentence begins with object and the subject we can put at the end of the sentence, in that sentence we call it passive voice. This one is a verb, it's action, and this one we call subject agent. In this situation, subject agent, and this one we call object agent. So instead of some mind, when the sentence begins with the subject, we call active voice. When the sentence is written in active voice, we are going to focus the subject, not the object. When the sentence begins with object, and we are going to focus the object, in that situation, we can call passive voice. Dear students, now you can identify easily the difference between active voice and passive voice. Simply, when the sentence begins with a subject and we are going to focus the subject, we call it active voice, like this one. When the sentence begins with object and we are going to focus the object, we call it passive voice. For example, now, if I say, Ahmed kicked the ball, in this sentence, we began Ahmed, which is subject. But this one, the ball was kicked. We started this one, the object, receiver. In this situation, we call object. Now, simply, when the sentence begins with subject, we can call subject active voice. And when the sentence begins with object, we can call passive voice. Let me give you another important example to understand well what I'm telling you now. For example, I say, Muhammad, sorry, it's not Muhammad, the thief was arrested. The thief was arrested by the police. In that sentence, we started the object, which is the thief. And that sentence we can call past voice because of it starts with the object. But if I say the police arrested the thief, in that sentence we can call active voice. Dear students, I hope that you can understand well the difference between active voice and passive voice. Don't confuse, don't say, I don't know the difference between active voice and passive voice. Simply you have to know whenever our sentence begins with a subject, we can call active voice in that sentence. And when the sentence begins with object, we can call passive voice. Dear students, inshallah, now let us continue. Let us take general uses of passive voice now. If you understood well the difference between active voice and passive voice, let us continue the general uses of passive voice. And the question is like this: when should you use passive voice? Want to use a passive voice? That's a question. A lot of students, especially Somali students, always they are confused. Want to use a passive voice because of already you know active voice. Dear students, inshallah ta'ala, in this lesson, I'd like to tell you the 4 major uses of passive voice. These are one of the most common uses of passive voice. Sometimes it can be more, but for me, just I want to tell you simply the 4 major uses of passive voice. Let's continue. Dear students, the first situation we are going to use a passive voice is when the subject is not known, when the subject is unknown. You don't know who did the action. Simply you have to use a passive voice. For example, let me tell you a simple example. In the morning, when you get up, you saw a man was killed and put in front of your house, and you don't know who killed that man. Simply you have to use a past voice, then you have to say a man was killed. Who killed him? You don't know. Simply you have to use a past voice. So the first situation we are going to use a past voice is when the subject is not known. When the subject is not known. The number 2, or the second one, is when the subject is being terrified. You know terrified well. Terrified means afraid. This one means afraid. This is a great issue. You know who did the action, but simply you are afraid for yourself. You are afraid of yourself. For example, you are a reporter, you are a journalist. Since a passive is a media language, always the media always uses passive voice. So, for example, you are a reporter or journalist from Somalia. You know that Al-Shabaab group killed 25 people in Somalia. You know when? And you know who did this action is Al-Shabaab. But if you say Al-Shabaab killed 25 people in Somalia, you will be the next one. So don't tell police. Otherwise they will kill you. They will search you, Al-Shabaab, then will kill you easily. So simply we have to say when the subject is being terrified. Simply you have to use a past voice. Then you have to say 25 people were killed in Somalia. Who killed is Al-Shabaab, but you don't like to mention. Let me take another example which is very important for us to understand our lesson well. Suppose you are a student and you are weak. You don't have any power. You are not strong. One student who is very strong and very powerful student, he wrote something is bad comment to the teacher on the board. Then he sat. When the teacher came in, for example, when the teacher came, he said, "Oh, students of mine who wrote this one on the board, you tried to tell the teacher that this student wrote this one, but he looked at you, he looked at you angrily. Then you are afraid because of you are weak, you don't have your power. Simply you have to use the past voice. Then you have to say something was written on the board. For example, that's the example we can use. So the second one, when the subject is being terrified. The third one, when the subject is obvious. Obvious means clear. You know this one? This one means, dear students, clear. You know? This one is clear. Really, you know who this one, you know, but it's the obvious, it's the clear, everyone knows. For example, you say, Ahmed was arrested. Everybody or every one of us knows the only police can arrest something. So simply you have to say, Ahmed was arrested. In that situation, we can use a past voice where the subject is be clear or it's obvious or everybody knows that situation. Dear students, yeah. Lastly, when the subject is not important, the subject and object, the object is more important than to the subject. For example, let me say, this hotel was repaired. We don't like to mention who repaired this one. But the most important one is our hotel, it's our restaurant. You know, this restaurant was repaired. For example, that one, the one who repaired this one is not important. We don't like to mention that one. These are the four main uses of past voice. Let me say one more time. We are going to use a past voice when the subject is not known, when the subject is being terrified or afraid, when the subject is obvious or clear, and when the subject is not important. It's not important. We are going to focus the object. Dear students, now I think you understood well. Let me tell you the last step, which is how can you change from active voice to passive voice. I'm going to give you a simple formula. Do not memorize a lot of formula like that, but just I'm going to give you a simple formula. Be with me, please. Dear students, this is the last one. Now, let us understand how to change from an active voice to passive voice sentence. I'm going to give you a simple formula. Dear students, a lot of students, our students, or maybe other students or my students, always they confuse. Teacher, how can I change easily from active voice to passive voice? This is very simple. Some teachers always they give you to memorize each thing it is formula. But for me, I'm not that teacher. Just I'm gonna give you a simple formula. For example, dear student, you have an active voice sentence, and your teacher said to you, change it to passive voice. This is a simple one. For example, you have to find out first, follow these steps. Step number 1, find out SVO. SVO, which stands for subject, verb, and object. This one, as I previously told you, this one S is a subject. S is a subject. And V stand what? Verb. And O stand what? Object. Whenever you are going to change from active voice sentence to passive voice sentence, you have to find out, you have to underline the subject and the verb and the object. If you don't see one of these words, don't change. Do not change that one. Just simply you have to leave out. You have to say this one cannot be changed to past voice. So simply, dear students, whenever you have an active sentence, the first step that you are going to take is to find out or underline the subject and the verb and the object. Subject always comes first, and the next one is the verb, and the last one is object. When you see this one, subject, verb, and object, step number 2, be with me please. Don't sleep in a class, okay? I'm your teacher. I'm gonna help you, please. Step number 2, you have to begin with object. Begin with object. And that object, you have to write like the form of subject. For example, if the object is like this, I like him. This sentence is the active voice. Why? Because if it starts with the subject. This one, I is a subject pronoun, and like is a verb, and him is the object. So now I have step number 1. Number 2, you have to begin with object, and that object it becomes what? Subject. Him, tell me the subject of him is he. Previously I told you this one. I already have told. So him becomes he. So that's a step number 2. Number 3, use be family members. This one say use be family members. I think you know be family members. Be family members are is, are, was, and were, and also be, and also be. These are called be family members. In some are, we can use simple present and present continuous tense. This one is a present tense. Was and were, we can use passive tense, like simple passive and passive continuous tense. And also be, we can use somehow simple future. And being, we can use perfect tenses, such as a present, person, like that. Already I told you that one. I don't like to teach you again. So dear students, again you have to use be family members. Then number 4, your verb, your main verb must be past participle or verb 3. This one we call verb 3. I think you know verb 3. Verb 3 is the third form of the verb. For example, this one, see, is a verb 1, and so is a verb 2, and see is a verb 3. Past voice always you have to use passive participle of your verb. This is a simple formula. Always, sometimes you can add or you can leave the word by plus subject. This one is optional. You can leave out. Sometimes you don't like to mention the subject. But that subject you have to write like the form of object. For example, you have to say, if the subject was this, by, you have to write like by me. I think dear students, this is a main formula. You can understand easily. Whenever you are going to change from active voice sentence to passive voice sentence, you have to take these steps. Verse number 1, you have to find out subject and the verb and the object. Then you have to begin with object, and that object you have to write like the form of object, of subject. Then you have to use be family members. Be family members, you know, if the tense is a simple present or present continuous, use is some are according to the subject. If the subject is a singular, use is. If the subject is a plural, use are. If the subject is I, use am. If the tense is a past, you already know tenses well because already I have taught that one. If the tense is a past, like a past simple or past continuous, use was somewhere, and others are like that. Dear students, this is very simple. Now I'd like to tell you one example. I'm gonna give you one tense only to understand what I'm telling you now. And here, look at me, please. Okay, sorry. I'm erasing on my hand because I don't have any duster here. I don't have time to read that one. I'm very sorry that one. This one you have to say example. Example. Let me say examples. Al-misal. Students of mine, in here I have taught a simple step that you can follow, to change from active voice to passive voice. Now I like to apply the formula. This one we call active voice. active voice. I have to write one tense. This tense I call simple present tense. It's the easiest tense. For example, I have to say Ahmed speaks English. This one is Ahmed speaks, not is. Some people always they pronounce wrong and it's not correct. Don't say is. That's a Somali pronunciation. You have to say Ahmed speaks. So Ahmed speaks English. This is an active voice sentence. Why? Because of this one is the subject and this one is the verb and the last one is the object. Now that's step number one. When you are going to change to passive voice sentence, you have to begin with object. Always they flip-flop. The subject and the object they flip-flop. They exchange turning. The subject becomes the object becomes the subject, and the subject becomes the object. So let us start English. Let me take what? English. Then tell me the next one. Now I have two steps. Step number one, I have worn out SVO, subject, verb, and object. Then next, I have to begin with object. I began the object in English. Then what's the next? Tell me please, dear students. I have already told you. Go back to the formula. Find out SVO. Then begin with object. I began that one. This one use be family members. Don't forget that one. Use be family members. Be family members of simple presses are isamar. Because of this one, they need to memorize. Go back to all English tenses and memorize. English is a singular, then you have to use is. The last step was what? Your verb must be passive participle. English is speak, spoke, spoken. Yeah, that's correct. Spoken. English is spoken. This is simple process is the form of past voice. You can live like this, and also you can add the word by and write the word Ahmed. It's a noun, so don't change. Ahmed, English is spoken. English is spoken. You can live like this by Ahmed. Example number two, I'm gonna tell you the last example here. I have to say, I like him. I like him. First, I have to find out SVO. I is a subject. Like is a verb. And him is the object. Then change it to passive voice. It's starting with the O. And it becomes what? He. Him is the object. You have to write the form of subjective form of him. It becomes like he. He is a subject. Then you have to use be family members of simple presses. Be family members in simple presses become isamar. So you have to say is. Then write this one the past participle like, just add ed. Liked it. He's liked. You can live like that. We don't like to mention sometimes. Dear students, this lesson today is about the difference between active voice and passive voice. Now, you can answer the three questions which already I told you at the beginning of our objectives. And they were, identify the difference between active voice and passive voice. Then we said, when the sentence begins with subject, we can call active voice. And we are going to focus the subject. And when the sentence begins with the object, we can call passive voice. And always we are going to focus the object or the receiver of the action. Then we say general uses of passive voice. Then I have told you 4 major uses of passive voice. Lastly, I have told how to change from active voice to passive voice. And it said you have to follow 4 steps. First, find out SVO, then use be-verb memories according to the tenses that you are going to use. Then your main verb must be past participle. Then sometimes you can add at the beginning, at the end of the sentence, by plus subject plus object form of the previous subject. That's our lesson today. Inshallah ta'ala, students of mine, I support you and I love you and I hope that you will be able to understand. If you understand this lesson, no matter, don't worry about that one. Inshallah, again, I'll continue next lesson until we meet. This is an instructor Mubarak Deq Adam. See you in time. See you next time. Have a goodbye. Assalamu alaikum.